Good morning, LinkedIn.
Sorry.
There it is. Let's build happily with Max Cohen. Um, Continuing to talk about events today, and I got really excited for this one. So much so that I'm like, you know what? Let's forget about the daily 9 o'clock. I want to focus in on talking about events with Max. So it's like, okay, I'm gonna invite a bunch of people, right? And now it's like, oh, I need to, what are those people going to think of me?
Yeah.
Like, really want to understand. So, and I want to make a good impression. So I'm just going to suit up like out of nowhere uh, because I think maybe they'll like me better. And now we're here, and I need your help, Max, in understanding whether this is going to be a good tactic
Uh-huh.
uh, and the kind of feedback that people might have.
Okay.
Um, Best segue ever
Super good
into
segue.
what you guys got going on over there.
Absolutely love it, my man. Yeah, dude. So we're talking about feedback, right? Specifically, feedback around events you're hosting, right? So what have we talked about already? We've done like what, two or three of these? Or no, two-ish, I
Two,
think.
I think is
The
right.
very first one, we kind of walked through what it looks like to get people to like register for an event, right? And then we went ham on like expense tracking and stuff, right? Wasn't it the second one we did?
That was.
Yeah, right. Um, and then today we're going to be talking about how to gather feedback on those events, right? So not only like this has just been like like I'm having like a hard time wrapping my head around it because I learned so much about HubSpot doing this that I had just never known
Dude,
before, right?
every
Um,
time.
yeah,
I
like
mean, the lead up to our sessions is like the hype machine in my head. It's like Grand Central Station. Every Everybody's late to work, and all the train of thoughts need to leave like right now,
yeah,
right? And
yeah,
it's just like, oh, we could probably do this. Oh, we could probably do this.
yes, and there's so many things that we can do now. So let's talk about what this actually is, right? So gathering feedback, like in general, in HubSpot, right? You've got Service Hub, right? Service Hub has the feedback survey tool, right? And also, full disclaimer, Service Hub's biggest fan, this guy, right? The one downfall of that that survey's object. Hold on, I'm just refreshing the stream over here because it looks like we're frozen for some reason. Oh, we're good. The one sort of like downfall of that survey tool in Service Hub is that the feedback submission object that it creates when people give feedback on those surveys, it like only ties to like contact records, right? It's like one of these like sort of pseudo objects in the background that doesn't have like a full object record, right? And so me and Dax, as we've been working through trying to figure out the best way that folks who are using Event Happily can gather feedback on events, we started like very intensely looking into like that feedback tool and the surveys tool because at first glance it was like duh, like HubSpot has a surveys tool, like obviously we're going to use surveys, right?
And yeah, and just for some context here, of all the things I would actually love to be a part of the data model and the maps that I have access to in HubSpot, feedback submission is actually one of the things that they do have mapped.
Uh-huh.
So there was some thought originally put into this, and it's like connecting to the people that we're trying to do business with, right?
Yep.
But like a lot of things, when it's very like laser focused, like they're very good at laser focusing on the goal of this thing that they're developing, that means all these other ways, right? We got to figure out,
Yeah.
you know.
Am I seeing this right? That feedback submission objects are associated to deals? Is that what this diagram is saying?
Uh,
Oh,
it
no,
is
never mind.
only
It's going to the
to
ticket.
tickets and contacts.
Interesting. Oh, so maybe if you do like one of the customer effort score surveys in Service Hub, that gets triggered after a ticket is closed, then it
Correct.
goes to the ticket. That makes sense. Okay,
Yep.
cool. So it goes to tickets and it goes to contacts. I don't believe it goes to companies, right?
Nope.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
So therein lied the challenge, right? And like, don't get me wrong. You can use feedback surveys to gather feedback on your event, right? You can go create a survey for a specific event. You can pop the link to that into like a personalization token and fire it off in an email. Or, I mean, you wouldn't even have to put it you can put it in like a session level or like event level personalization token in an email and fire it off via workflow. You can do that, right? And I still think there's uses for that, right? However, go ahead and bring up like an event object for me, right? The whole point of the event object, or one of the whole points of the event object, is to be able to gather all the data about that event. Did you want me to bring it up?
You want to do your screen or mine?
Yeah, go to my screen. We'll kind of take a peek.
There we go.
Right.
Sounds good.
So here's like an event object in HubSpot, right? And you know, one of the big things that we see people using this for, right, is doing like a lot of like reporting, such as like registrations, right? You know, also your ROI, which we talked about extensively last time, using the activities to be able to track conversations and emails and, you know, communications back and forth around planning like this specific event, right? But what if we lived in a world where on these records, you also got information about the feedback that you got from this event, right? Now, the limitation that we ran into when it came to using the feedback tools is that we didn't really have a way to show feedback submissions on a custom object, right? So that made us go, like, I get that you can go create a survey, but like, you know, I want to see everything about that event, right? How much I spent on it, who was invited, how many people attended, what sort of deals we've got opened up, right? Why would I want to have something that I can't see on here and have to go to another part in HubSpot to go see this information, right? Or another place in HubSpot, right? So we were like, how can we get feedback on the event record, right? And the secret became using the registrant object, right? If you think about the registrant object in HubSpot, what does that registrant, well, specifically the one that Event Happily creates, right? And if anyone here is late to the party, okay, the registrant object is something that we have that shows essentially, let me go to registrations, that shows who's registered for your event, right? But it also serves as like a junction object between your event, the session someone signed up for, and the contact, right? So again, it's supposed to tell you a story of how somebody interacted with an event, right? When they signed up, which event they signed up for, what sessions they chose to register for as well in that event, right? Which sessions did they attend? Which sessions did they not attend? It only makes sense that record also tells the story of the experience they had with that event. And the way that you figure out the experience that they had with that event is by gathering feedback. So the registrant object quickly became a very natural place for us to put that, right? Because if you think about it, if a registrant object represents each time I go to an event, okay, each time I go to an event, I'm going to have different feedback about each one of those events. So it makes sense to seed it all with the same information, right? It's an instance of me going to an event. How much did I enjoy that event? What was my net promoter score of that event? What was my overall satisfaction of that event? What are specific questions I got asked about that event that I gave an answer to for this one versus this other one, right? So what we did is we figured out how you can use registrant objects and HubSpot forms to gather feedback. But on top of that, you can create unique URLs to these forms to gather the right feedback, to make sure that when people fill the forms out, it's writing the information directly to the registrant object without having to do anything goofy in terms of copying information from a contact to a registrant object, right? Chris, what are your initial thoughts?
Oh man, this is so good because, you know, contact records are probably the record I'm most protective of in terms of if you're dealing with a human being and you want to understand what has happened with that human being, the contact record exists for that purpose. And HubSpot is entirely built around that record. So when we think about custom objects, I'm always like, that's the one where it's like, okay, maybe like, why can't we do this on the contact record? But what you're describing is the registrant object actually acts like an experience management object.
Yes. Tells the
So,
whole story. Feedback is
right?
part of that story. Yeah.
Yeah. So like if you were to try to do this because you might have similar thoughts that I just mentioned, as far as I don't want another object that feels like it's just, complicating things, or I want it to work with the service, feedback tools. If you have an event led or audience focused demand generation strategy, and you get some real champions that are like showing up all the time, giving you great feedback, that's going to get real messy real quick on their
Yep.
contact record, right?
Exactly.
And we all already know how messy the activity feed can get by itself.
Yep.
So creating this other space, and that's where it's like, once you give yourself this space, the automation part is, I'm sure, the shiny object part. But how many times are we trying to marry quantitative and qualitative data, and we don't do it because it's only going to go in a spreadsheet or an email, and it's going to be hard to maintain? How are we going to possibly go through all this? So starting with some kind of foundation where this is where the known plan stuff is going to go. But now that I have it here, I can also say, hey, this person just randomly, messaged me on LinkedIn, and they said this other thing about the event that we didn't get in the survey, but super awesome comment that now I'm going to add to their registrant record, right?
Totally.
I've got the space to do that. And since I'm doing it in HubSpot, it's not going into a spreadsheet that nobody's going to see, right?
Yep.
The next month, when my sales bro gets on the demo with them, he can connect immediately because he can see, hey, you're at this event and you like this thing, right? Like that cut to context, man, powerful.
Huge. And then even think about leveraging folks who said they were promoters of that event, right? Like we talk a lot about net promoter score. It's something you can do with HubSpot feedback surveys, but a couple of properties and some calculated fields will get you there to be able to do it on event records too. So you could literally measure event level NPS if you wanted to, and then average out those scores across all your events, right? And not have to analyze a bunch of different separate, feedback surveys, right?
Yeah.
Cool. So
because that's what happens.
Yeah.
That analysis part, even the people that mean well and know how powerful it can be to track this stuff, it just gets overwhelming because you go to that spreadsheet, you get everybody involved in the recap session. We got the spreadsheet up live, we're typing everything in, and it doesn't help you do anything else next.
Yeah,
right? Everything else is still manual labor, so it just naturally does not get done.
Yeah. And the other thing that's like cool too, like I think I harp a lot on like why it makes sense for us to like build this event management engine on HubSpot, right? Like the biggest thing that I think is like a benefit of doing this on HubSpot is obviously taking advantage of HubSpot's extensive customization, right? And like what's really cool is this like method I'm going to show you here would not only allow you to like send sort of like a blanket sort of standard feedback survey to people, but also let you send a different one if you want to do a specific feedback survey for a specific event, right? You know, and there's all these different things that you can do with it. So let me show you how to build it into your portal that you have. Do you want to go ahead and share your screen and I can walk you through it?
Yes.
Cool. All right.
All right.
Take mine off.
Yep. Let me get into this. All right. Okay, we're up. Remove this. Add to stage. All right. So
Cool.
where are we going?
Let's get started. So the way that we do this is we basically need to prep the registrant object, right? To be able to start gathering feedback, right? So what I'm gonna have you do first is let's go into the settings. This is a true let's build because we're gonna build this from scratch here, right?
Yes.
So let's go to our registrant object. And the first thing I'm gonna have you do, we're just gonna do one question here, right? But keep in mind, all you need to do is just repeat this not repeat the full thing. You're gonna set this up once and then it's a matter of just choosing what questions you want on the forms, right? But there's a couple of little things that we need to set up for it to work, right? So let's do this. Let's go edit your properties for registrant records. And what we're going to do here is before we create a property, let's actually just create a group, right? So go to groups and then create a group. Just call this happily registrant feedback. And what's cool about this is like eventually when HubSpot lets you define more advanced like formulas and like roll-up fields and stuff through the API, we'll be able to just build this in like right out of the box, which is cool. But again, you know, this is just another really great, you know, big brain use case for the registrant object in the meantime, right? Because it just really makes sense to kind of do it on here. So,
Yep.
So we've created our group, right? Why don't we just hover over that group and hit view properties? Cool. And let's go create a property here. Sweet. So go ahead and put it in the feedback group. And let's go ahead and give it a label of, let's just call this overall or event satisfaction score or something like that. Right. Again, these can be whatever questions you want to ask. Right. We're just going to do like a pretty simple one here. And let's go ahead and hit next. And let's do a field type and give it a drop down. This would also work with, I mean, this works with any property, right? But like this type of question generally seats best with or works best as like a drop down. So go ahead and let's do, let's type in 5, very satisfied. Or actually, no, let's just write very satisfied. We don't need to give it numbers. And then go down to the next one, somewhat satisfied. We'll do somewhat dissatisfied. I think there's 2 S's. I'm bad at spelling this word.
There it is.
Yeah. And then very dissatisfied. Right. You can ask whatever questions you want. We're just using this as an example, right? So go ahead and hit next. And then hit create. It's very important here that you make sure show in forms, pop-ups, and bots is checked off. So hit create. Cool. So we've got a question, right? We're going to ask this question on a form. However, there is meets expectations. That would have been a good one. We should have put that in there. Good idea.
Let's just fix it real quick.
Yeah, dude, let's do it. Why not? Let's show it how easy it is. I'd say neither satisfied or dissatisfied, but meets expectations is way better. All right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Let's say like I'm feeling like this one.
Yeah, there you go. Cool.
And
All right.
Put it in the middle.
That's the mid response. Wonderful. Okay. Now, here's the trick. We're going to build two sneaky little properties that are really going to, drive the functionality behind this. Okay. So go ahead and hit create property. And the first one that we're going to create is, I just call it record ID for survey. Now you might be saying, hey, Max, it's a HubSpot object. It already has a record ID field. You will see later why this is important. Okay. So go ahead and hit next, and then field type, you're going to select a single line text. All right. Now, this is the most important part. Under validation rules, where it says require unique values for this property, you're going to check that off. Now, I'm going to pause and explain why. Okay. We all know HubSpot forms, right? When a contact fills out a form, what is the property on that form that runs the deduplication? Chris?
Email,
right? Did you know you can have other objects do form submissions?
like
Whoa.
create objects based on a form submission.
Kind of. Yep.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
The way this works, and this might not be news to you, Chris, but it was hella news to me, and I spent years not understanding this, right? Is the way that you can deduplicate a different object through a HubSpot form submission is having a property on that form where this setting is turned on, where it requires a unique value. So what's going to happen here is we're going to use the record ID of the object to deduplicate registration objects to make sure the proper registration object is updated when there's a form submission, right? Now, we cannot expect people, especially people going to our events, to know what the record ID is.
We can't.
Of their registration object.
They're not in our HubSpot portal.
No, we can't do that. We cannot. We want to make it easy for them. So we're going to create this, and then we are going to create one more field that's going to put this on easy mode for our event registrants. So
We like easy mode.
the last one you're going to create here is going to be called unique survey link. And what we are going to do is when we have a link to our survey, we are going to use this field to automatically populate a link to the event end survey that you can send out through a workflow or whatever, right? Usually it's probably always going to be through a workflow, right? That will give someone a link to the survey and will auto-populate the record ID so the form submission can deduplicate it, right? So go ahead and make this a single line text field. Hit next. And then, show in forms. Perfect. Hit create. We don't need to worry about or require a unique value for this. All right. Sweet. So we've got everything we need. The only other thing you would need past this is what other questions you want to ask on the survey, right? We're going to ask one today to keep it simple. Okay. So the next thing we need to do is we need to make it so when registrant objects get created, the record ID field that we created is automatically set. And then it also generates the survey link. Okay. So let's go into our workflows. we are going to create a registrant based workflow. So let's do a registrant based workflow here.
And again, like, because we decided to manage our events in this way, all of the tools in HubSpot are
Work with
available
all the
to help
objects.
us.
Yes. Yes.
Not like, oh, how can I get deals and tickets to do this thing they're not meant to do?
Nah,
Nope,
brah. Just
not
works.
that.
So go ahead and hit next. Okay. So why don't you just call this workflow like registrant object setup or whatever, right? So like, let's pretend you've got a workflow with a bunch of automations you want to do, maybe including this one that is going to update the registrant object with some information as soon as it's created, right? You could call this registrant object survey setup. You could call it whatever the you want, right? That really doesn't matter. Let's just go ahead and set this up. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up some triggers here. And we are going to choose a trigger-based workflow. So when it says when an event occurs, don't confuse when an event occurs to like events you're managing in HubSpot. This is different, right? So go ahead and choose that. And you're going to do this upon object creation. So see where it says object created on the right? Cool. Just click that and then hit save. So this is going to run the second a registrant object is created. Don't worry about any existing registrants that you have. We can just enroll those in the workflow after we're done building it, right? So what we need to do when a registrant object gets created is, one, we've got to populate that record ID for the survey. And two, we've got to create the link for it, okay? So go ahead and let's do that first part first, and then we'll go set up our form, and then we'll come back and finish this, right? So step one, go ahead and hit plus. And we're going to do CRM as the types of actions. And we are going to set a property value. Wunderbar. And then what we're going to do is we're going to choose a property to set. And we are going to search for that record ID field that we created. So search record ID. And choose record ID for survey. And where it says record ID for survey, we're simply going to search for the regular record ID, right? So search for record ID here. And that's going to be the record ID of the actual registrant object itself, right? Again, if you're saying, Max, why are we just copying one value into another? I'll get there and we'll show it to you. All right. So go ahead and hit save. Wonderful. Hit save. Sweet. We're going to come back to this workflow and we're going to finish it after we build our form, right? So let's get out of here real quick. Let's go into marketing and then we'll go to forms. Yes. And let's create a form here. Let's do a standalone page, right? We don't need to build a landing page for this. Let's do next. Let's just start with a blank template. Bless you. And
Powerful mic.
Yeah, and let's do where it says new form. Let's just call this, post-event survey or something like that. Yeah, post-event satisfaction survey. Cool. All right. Now, we do not care to write any information to a contact record using this form. So what we're going to do, see where it says email? We're going to delete that.
Yes.
No email on the form.
Uncharted territory here, folks.
How are we going to deduplicate it? This is scary, isn't it? Right?
Just hold our hand here. It's going to be okay.
Everybody relax, okay? It's going to be fine. All right? So what we're going to do in this scenario is on the left-hand side, we're going to start putting some fields on this form, right? So actually just scroll down for me until you see the internal name of the registrant object is orca_attendee. That's a little Easter egg we have in there. These were the original names of the objects when we created them, right? Now, notice how when you open that up, there's only certain properties that you can use on this, right? the record ID that's created by HubSpot when that object schema is essentially defined, right? It does not let you use those in forms, nor does it let you change the option to allow it to be used in forms, which is why we created that field for record ID for survey, right? So what you're going to do is you're going to drag over record ID for survey, right? When you finally finish this form and you're using it for real, you will remove, or not remove, you will make this field hidden, okay? It'll still exist in the background, but we're going to make it hidden, all right? And then what you're going to do is you're going to drop in your questions. So grab your event satisfaction score, pop it in there, and unique survey link. You don't got to worry about that. Don't even touch that. That's fine, right? So this is where you would go in and you'd add, other registrant object questions you want for your survey, okay? So what you're going to do is go ahead and hit update. Go save this, right? And let's go hit publish. Cool. Go copy that share link that it gives you. All right. And then what we're going to do is we're going to just hit X here. Yep. Hit X here and then just open up a new tab, like duplicate this tab just because I want to be able to come back here for a second, just as I demonstrate this next part. Right. And then just go back to our workflow. Cool. So what we are going to do is we are going to create that unique link per registrant, right? And what we're going to do is we're going to enter in a URL parameter or a query string or whatever these things are called, right? And create a link that has that in there that's going to populate the value of that record ID unique field, right? So go ahead and hit plus here. Let's go and do CRM and we'll do set a property again. And then do property value to set. Let's do unique link or unique survey link, whatever we call it, right? And then where it says unique survey link, this is what I want you to do. I want you to paste in the link to that survey, right? Cool. Then what we're going to do is we're going to create so stay here, right? We're going to create a query parameter. What you're going to do is at the end of the URL, type in a question mark and then go back to the form. Or sorry, where you're editing it. So see how it says record ID for survey? That's the label. And then record ID for survey with the underscores, that's the internal name of the form. All right. What we need to do is we need the query parameter to update the field with that internal name to whatever the ID actually is. Right. See where I'm going with this? Mm-hmm. So I don't know if you click that, I don't know if you can copy it or if we just select that, copy it. And then go back into the registered object. And what you're gonna do is paste that right there after the question mark. And then you're gonna type the equal sign. Right. So this is like, people do hidden field stuff like that for form submissions like all the time. This isn't like groundbreaking, crazy stuff here, right? What you're going to do is you're going to pop in the record ID here, right? So go just search for record ID. In theory, you could do the record ID for survey field too as well, but it's like, you might as well just use the record ID, right? And hit save. Okay. So let's test this out. So let's go ahead and hit review and publish. All right. And let's go enroll all the existing Happily registrants that we have, right? Because we don't have time to like have a bunch of people sign up for something. So hit create a custom filter, add filters, and let's hit add criteria. And then registrants, just use Happily registrant properties and just say like record ID is known or something, and that'll get all of them.
Here's me hoping that there's one that exists.
Have you not created any registrants yet?
It's possible.
Well, we'll find out.
X here.
Yep. Yeah, just go back. All right, save and enroll. Oh, let's see if it has any. Hold on. What? Chris, you haven't had any registrants. That's fine. That's fine. Hit turn on. We'll go create a registrant. Cool. All right. So why don't you take me to one of your, yeah, we're done with the form. You can get out of here.
All right.
All right. Go take me to one of your events. Do you have like a sign up page set up at least yet? Oh, putting you on the spot, Chris.
Yeah.
It's so let me ask you this. Do you have like a sign up page set up for like any of the sessions?
We did in the beginning. Trying to think. Let's see here.
Yeah, go to your website pages. Let's see if there's any that are operational. Yeah, your Happily session page is published. Go click on it. All right, let's do this. Instead of setting all this up, let's just create a session or create a registrant object like manually. It's really easy. So go back. I'll pretend you had this set up already, right? Go to one of your events. Just go to one of your events and do it. Yep. And then go to like any one of these events. And let's go and just add a manual registrant object. Yep. And then it's called create new, right? And then let's just do what the only thing we need is really like a name. All right, so let's scroll down. First name, just type Chris. Yep. And just create it, right? Now, for anyone that doesn't know, is like these registrant objects get created automatically when people sign up for events. Unfortunately, Chris hasn't set up an event for someone to sign up for yet, right? Which I'm mad at him about, right? But it's okay. It's all good. So let's go back to where it says Happily Events. Oh, actually, no, we're on the registrant record.
We're on the registrant.
So the registrant object was created, right? Generally, these are getting created by form submissions, right? But what we should see, if we go into the properties for this registrant record, right? So on the left, go ahead and hit actions and customize properties, or not customize, I'm sorry. Actually, we could put you might be able to, oh yeah, you got your event satisfaction score in there. Wonderful. So get out of here. Go hit actions and view your properties. Yep. So if you search for survey, or yeah, if you just look at your feedback, you see how the record ID for survey is already populated and the unique survey link is populated, right? So this survey link you would send to somebody in an email, right? So you do a registrant-based workflow that sends an email to the associated contact, right? And this is what it would send to them. So Chris, go to this link. See how the record ID is already filled out, right? Go ahead and fill this out. So go hit, choose one of these and hit submit. Okay. Go back to the registered object and hit refresh right here. Isn't that crazy? So
yes, and clearly my ingrained concerns for wanting to use the contact record with dealing with people whenever possible has caused me to not mess around with the register object very much, as you can see here today.
Yep.
Now this helps me clarify why it is a very important piece of the puzzle. It's not just like, for me, this takes it from, I just need to know where they showed up and when. And now it can tell a full story of that specific experience, no matter how many times they show up.
Yes.
Right.
Exactly.
So,
and you're not dealing with any stupid bullshit with like copying properties over or doing any weird like sync properties or like anything like that. Right.
Right.
And here's the best part. If they want to fill the survey out again, because maybe they screwed it up or they didn't finish it, or, something changed and they changed their mind on something, they can hit that link again, fill it out, and it's still updating the same registrant object, right?
Yeah. Let's
so now,
just do that.
Yep. Go change it to met expectations.
We come back here.
Refresh.
Refresh.
Easy.
Man.
Easy button, dude. So simple.
We've got details here, and we can see a history. Like,
Yeah.
I guarantee you almost everybody in the HubSpot ecosystem takes this kind of ease for granted.
Yep.
Other systems, like, this is why when we talk about if there's a reason to get the data in HubSpot, if you can find any reason at all, that is likely just the surface reason. And if you actually bring it in, now just so many things become possible, and also easier to test, experiment, manage, maintain, communicate with your colleagues. Like like this is not possible in other systems. Like the whole setup, the way that we just did it on the fly. I mean, I was not prepared for this.
All good.
But we did it in like 15 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
And let's take it a step further.
Yes, let's do it.
Let's go build a report that shows us analytics for this question, right? So go into reports, create a single object report. Now, granted, you could do custom report builder stuff with this, right? And just use the registrant object and the event object, right? But what would be super cool? Now, let's not mess with the AI system.
I want to test it so bad.
What would be super cool is when we're looking at our event objects, if we can see feedback for that event, right? And since that's on the registrant object, we could easily do that using a single object report on a middle panel on that event object, right? So let's go hit happily registrants. And next. And what you're going to do is you're going to add happily registrant properties. And you're going to search for that question you asked. Yep. And let's go ahead and do a visualization. And, you know, depending on how we want to do this, why don't we do like a bar graph or something, right? Or you could do a pie chart. It's good for this too, right? You could do a table if you want to see like the registrant's name next to the answer they gave for the question, like whatever.
Yeah, because I need it to look exactly like my Excel sheet in order to appreciate it.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure.
But we also love a good pie chart.
Yeah, sometimes it's comfort zone, dude. Some people maybe want to see
all the time
of that, right?
Yep.
So let's go ahead and take event satisfaction score and let's put it on the displaying section here, right? And then what we're gonna do. Oh yeah, you got to do count of happily registrants. Sorry, there you go. So now we can see 100% of people so far. It met expectations because we've only had one registrant record do this, right? What I would also recommend doing here is going to data and where it says filters, I would filter this out by setting the create date time is all time. All time, just so we're not like weirdly filtering this. Yeah. And then other filters, just hit add filter here. Let's just show objects where the answer to the question is known, right? Because we want to filter out registrant objects that haven't answered this question yet, right? So search for satisfaction. Yep. Event satisfaction is known. Hit apply. Bing, bang, boom. And hits next. And then give this report a name. Just call this like event satisfaction or something like that. Sick. And hit save. And hit next. We don't need to put it on a dash. You could put it on a dashboard. We're not going to worry about it.
I'm definitely generating.
Wow, look at that. That's cool. Wow.
This report shows the total count of event satisfaction scores. I mean,
dude, but look at what it says. It improves it provides insights to the overall satisfaction level of events, helping you to understand how well they are being received by attendees. By analyzing this data, you can make informed decisions to improve future. Dude, that's crazy.
I know.
Dude,
like, I realized this morning.
It saw something that's called happily registrants, and it figured this out. That's
right.
Nuts. Give that a smiley face. Give that a smiley face. How'd we do? Let's train the AI. Good boy.
And it's like, AI. I'm preparing the post this morning. This is what we're going to talk about. And until I remember, and I put like, imagine just putting it right into your HubSpot. Okay, first I said CRM, and then I'm like HubSpot CRM, and then I'm like, okay, let's do HubSpot Smart CRM.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh, now you can get help from AI.
Yeah, dude.
Like
Sick.
with
All right, hit next. Sweet.
we're not adding to
No,
dashboard.
yeah, I mean,
right.
you could, but we're not going to do that. All right, so let's hit next and save again. Okay. Now let's make it so that when you're looking at an event record, you can see the feedback from the event, right? So let's get out of here. Let's go back again. And let's go to our event objects. Or actually, yeah, we can just go do a record customization real quick. So objects, custom objects. And then we'll do record customization. And we'll do customize the middle column. All right. And let's go to the default view. And we're going to make this report show up right in the middle of this card, right? So you could create a new tab called event feedback, which is what I did. You could just add it to the overview. You can do whatever you want, right? It's freedom, right? It's HubSpot. You can do whatever you want. We're going to choose a report card here. And this is kind of similar to how I did the reports for like counting how many registrations you get leading up to an event, right? But just go ahead and call this like event satisfaction. And then choose the report you just built. So search for, yep, there you go, event satisfaction, right? And then where it says choose a filter, you're going to choose associations, right? So the reason you do this, right, is because you only want to see registered objects that are associated to the event that you're viewing it from, right? So go ahead and hit save.
Then I can preview
Yeah.
like
It's so cool. All right, sweet. Hit save and exit. You're done, my guy. And go back to your event. Go find whichever one we created it for, and then go down.
bam.
And there's your feedback report
Bam.
on your event record, right? And again, keep in mind, you can build dashboards that show feedback across all your events. You can filter that by the types of events you're doing. You can do the possibilities are like endless here. It's crazy, right? And all we did is build like two properties on the registered object and a dumb little form that like pulls in a unique ID. That's it. That's all we did, right? So it's just, again, such a really cool like additional like utility and justification for the existence of that registered object, right? And like, here's the other thing. This same use case or this same method, right? Sure, feedback surveys are great. But what if like you have people signed up for an event and you're getting closer to the event and you need to like gather some information from them? Maybe like a pre-event survey, right? What's your t-shirt size? What's some other information we need to gather that we didn't get on the registrant form, right? Or the sign up form, right? Because like you don't want to maybe ask them a million questions, but maybe you got to like do some stuff to help, change their experience or something leading up to the event. You could do the same method and just send it before the event, right? Like there's so many wild use cases for this, right?
Right. And
yeah.
Man, like how many
sick.
of those things don't get asked or don't get done because it's a pain in the ass to tell the person who needs to know it, to maintain the information. And then especially when it's like, stuff that really impacts the experience, like dietary preferences or allergies.
Yep.
Now, like instead of maintaining that in some other system that's like likely to get missed, or this is where the mistakes start to just go away because it's always in front of your face.
Yeah.
Right. And
yep.
And you might not be looking for it every time, but the chances to catch discrepancies like just increase dramatically.
Yeah. Right.
And when we're talking about consistent experiences and providing, like, if your internal process is consistent, watch the experiences become more consistent.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Like if we're having to remember all this stuff like on the fly because we've been doing it for 20 years, and then we bring in some help.
Mhm.
Good luck to that person if they don't have a system like this.
Exactly.
Right?
You want me to show you how I did the NPS stuff?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So this one's interesting. You want to share my screen here? And I'll kind of walk through it. Okay.
Shared.
So, if you're not familiar with what Net Promoter Score is, right? You've probably seen this on surveys you've taken in the past, right? It's often very confused and used incorrectly and calculated very incorrectly. And people don't really understand what the scores actually mean a lot of the time, right? So Net Promoter Score, this is a question that's always asked in a very particular manner, okay? Whenever you see the question of how likely are you to recommend XYZ to a friend or colleague or family member or whatever, right? You got to listen to what that's asking you, right? It's not saying, how much did you enjoy whatever it was? It's how likely are you to recommend somebody to this thing, right? Which is a very specific question. It's not how satisfied were you, right? And a lot of people look at these scores and you score it from 1 to 10, right? But you're scoring the likelihood that you're going to tell somebody else about it, right? So the way that it works is when someone answers a 9 or a 10, that response is categorized as a promoter, which means it's someone who's very likely to recommend you to somebody. A score of a 7 to 8 is what's considered a passive, right? Which means, probably not going to like recommend, right? Anything below a 6 down to a 0 is what's considered a detractor, which is someone who like takes away points from that, right? Like not only am I not going to like recommend people, I'm actually probably going to speak negatively about it, right? The calculation or the formula that you use to give you your net promoter score, right? Which is basically trying to say, what's the net amount of promoters that you have, right? Is measured from -100 to +100, okay? And the way they calculate this is they take the percentage of promoters and subtract the percentage of detractors, right? So the way that I accomplished this is using a combination of formula fields and I think probably like a workflow I did, right? So step 1, what we need to do is we need to ask a question that helps us categorize someone as a promoter, a passive, or a detractor, right? So we built a couple properties. One, a property that actually shows up on the form and asks the question, right? So if I go into my forms over here, we got 7 minutes. Let's see if we can get through this. I've got my post-event survey. We'll go edit this form. So I've got a question here, and I relabeled it, how likely are you to recommend this event to a friend or colleague, right? This is just using a property I built called likelihood to recommend, right? And the options here are anywhere from 10, extremely likely, to 0, not at all likely, right? And this is how NPS like marks this, right? So we ask this question. And then what I did is I built a registrant property called NPS result, okay? An NPS result is either going to be passive, detractor, or promoter based on how that person answers the question. So we built a little fun little workflow here called categorize NPS. This is another registrant based workflow. And what it's doing is it's looking for the property value of likelihood to recommend to change. So every single time that changes, right? So if someone comes back and does the survey again for that same event, let's say, like, I want to give a different score or whatever. You can stop it from doing that if you want to, right? And only let it run through once. But, you know, I'm forgiving. I let people change their mind if they want to, right? So I have a workflow here that checks, right? The score of likelihood to recommend. So if it's a 10 or a 9, it goes down the promoter path. If it's a 7 or 8, it goes down the passive path. If it's, 1 to 6, it goes, or 0 to 6, it goes to the detractor path. And then what it's doing here is it's setting NPS result to promoter, passive, or detractor, right? So then what I'm doing is on the event level record itself, right? So I'm going to come over here. We'll go to objects. We'll go to our custom objects. And I can look at our happily events. Okay. I have fields that count the amount of registrant objects that are categorized as either a detractor, a passive, or a promoter, right? So it looks at how many registrant objects there are, and it adds a number if that registrant is set to this specific thing. So if we go look at, promoter, for example, right? This is a roll-up field. It's a formatted number. It's looking at any associated happily registrant objects. It's choosing the NPS result property, okay? And then it's only counting it if it equals the NPS result that I want, right? So what ends up happening is you get a number of detractors, a number of passes, a number of promoters only when someone has submitted an answer to that question. Then what you do, and this is like, this looks kind of psychotic just because the formula itself for NPS is kind of wild, right? But what it's doing here is I'm doing a formula field. It's rounding to the nearest 0, okay? And what it's doing is it's taking the total number of promoters and dividing that by the total number of responses, just by adding up those 3 numbers. And then it's also subtracting that from the percentage of detractors, which is the total number of detractors minus the total amount of responses, right? And I just stacked these numbers here just because I didn't want to create another property for number of responses, right? You could do that if you wanted to, and this formula field would probably look easier, right? So then it just times it by 100, right? And that ends up giving us a number between negative 100 and positive 100, right? And what that does is it gives you that actual real NPS score based on the amount of responses you have and how they're categorized by detractor, passive, or promoter, right? So then what I did is I went on to our, let's go look at a event. Which one did I do this on? I think I did it on Cool Robot's Birthday Bonanza, right? Yep. And I just created a data highlight card that's literally just showing me the values of those properties. And Bob's your uncle, I've got an NPS score right here on our record, right? And each event that I look at, I can see the different NPS for each one. And again, since these are object properties, I could go build a report that shows me average NPS across all my different events. If I wanted to get real NPS, I could do a registrant-based report, right? And have it just calculate based on that, right? There's a whole bunch of stuff I could do, right? But I think it's generally coolest to see it on the record itself. But then, yeah, you could build an event level report that shows average NPS across all your different events or the change in the score or whatever, right? Like if you think about it, you can literally build like a report over time that shows all the different events and have like an NPS score in there and see how your NPS score has changed over time, right?
Yeah, like all the things you should be doing when you're spending all this damn money on events.
Yep.
Now that you have this done, you can actually do those things.
Yeah, do
because
people actually like the events? Like, and
everybody,
here's what's even cooler, dude. You could build lists that say, show me lists of contacts who are associated to a registrant object where the NPS result equaled promoter, and then use that list to get people to share like your future events with other people and to get them to invite them. What? It's so awesome. It's super cool.
Communicate with every stakeholder that might want to know how we're doing. Like, just because it's in HubSpot, we can send an email, we can send a task, we can send links to the record, like versus the spreadsheets and the emails. And what that does and the importance of that is it removes subjectivity that often impacts the process in bad ways. Either we had a bad score and we got to figure out how to tell the boss, or like now you can let, dare I say, HubSpot, be the bad guy in doing the informing, because we know that there's no agenda there, right?
Yeah.
And that's where teams get caught up in, like, feedback. And the way you started with, you have to have some objective metrics where everybody agrees this is what this means.
Yeah.
Right. It's a beautiful thing you guys are doing over there.
Dude, it's wild. So just to recap, right? Vet happily. Plan your events, coordinate your events. You could track expenses for your events if you want to. You could drive your registrations. You could do all your pre-marketing. You could do pre-event, post-event, in-flight event communications. You could track your attendance. You can tie deals back to it to do like an ROI calculation, right? And now you can gather feedback on those events. And you could do all of this on HubSpot, and you could customize it to work the way you want it to work, not the way some other third-party app works, right? And don't even get me started on reporting. It's crazy. Anyway,
and
I've
it's
got to
worth
run,
it.
buddy. But yeah,
Yes.
it's worth. Yeah, totally. And if you're looking for a great partner to deploy it, you're staring at one.
Hey, right here, all
Right
about
now.
it. Time to go past the lead
Yeah.
list, folks.
Yeah, and I promise you, he'll set up your registration forms. If you work with him, right? So,
As it's
cool,
needed
man.
for your situation, for sure.
I'm gonna get
all
a
right,
mulligan
man.
on that one.
Have a good
All right,
one,
everybody.
Max. Thanks
Have
for
a good
coming
one,
by.
Chris. Thanks for watching, folks.
Later.
Later.